yet. Because here's how we got to do it. We got to just go right into it. We can't have like a long preamble. We got to, the whole point is that you don't like really plan it out too far. So when we do this live thing, we can't just, we don't want to hyper analyze it or like talk too much. We want to just dive right into it.
Yeah. All right. So I titled the show. Who is responsible for your health? That's the title of the show. So I want to know, Max.
Mike,
because here's the thing.
I wanted to talk to you for a long time. This is going to take 30 seconds.
People are confused. It's obvious. It's very obvious to me. I'm witnessing this. I'm on the internet.
The problem
talking to people on the phone, and they're confused.
Mike, the problem with obvious.
Yeah.
Obvious just means that the person saying it wants you to know that they already knew this. That's all I mean. Obviously, that's what it is, Mike. I just obviously want you to know that I was already obviously good. All it means, when I hear someone say the word obvious, I just go, oh, this person wants me to know how smart they think they are.
I love it.
And I do it all the time.
All right, I want to hear your take on this.
I look back at my videos from when I was teaching people stuff 10, 12 years ago. I've been teaching people over the internet for like 12 years. I say obviously so damn much. I am such an insufferable prick with my knowledge of neuroscience. I swear to God. I just say, oh, well, this is obviously your median nerve that you're extending. And it's just like, dude, come on.
Well, here's the thing is, all words have a greater impact than what most people imagine. How I used to perceive words. The older I get, the more experience I have, the more I realize what an impact they're having. And yeah, man, you have a massive amount of influence with quite a few people. And it would not surprise me that throughout your years of using the word obviously, you were able to impact people and influence people to adopt your way of thinking. So I would just keep those kinds of things to yourself.
That seems obvious to me now.
It's true.
I think you're right.
I think it's true. I imagine it to be true. It's a fantasy of mine that it's true. We just keep going down that.
Then what is true?
Who knows? Nothing.
Well, I mean, that could be something worth talking about. Is like what makes up your experience? Like what percentage?
A lot of it. What do you mean?
A lot of it is visual.
Oh! What senses are you relying on primarily for your experience? Yeah, I've heard visual is something that is we put a lot more attention on than a lot of the other sensations in the body. So
it's for survival. I mean, it's like a life or death. Vision is a life or death kind of thing naturally. Now we have this like really nice social safety net where you can go without sight and still function. But I mean, imagine how brutal it would be to survive in nature if you couldn't see or hear. And those senses make up a huge percentage of our reality. And the more you reinforce those things, the more you attach yourself to that particular type of hunger for stimulus too. So if you're really looking at visual stimuli and your whole mind is engrossed in that visual stimuli, it's going to reinforce that behavior pattern, and your perception of reality is going to become highly visual and lowly tactile, and that's going to leave you feeling a disconnect between mind and body.
I see. Yeah, I mean, the mind is made up of basically people don't really remember. I imagine the musicians do. And since you're a musician, I would like to hear your take on this. But when I go to retrieve a memory, there is normally a picture or words that take me to that memory, that I can reproduce that memory with words, a thought, or a visual. But I rarely can reproduce a sound in my head. And not saying that I can't, because I can reproduce a sound in my head, but when searching for a memory, I usually go for a visual or a graphic representation of what's going on.
Well, and it's always, I believe it always has a word at its core, because a word is just a way that we derive meaning from that image. Like your vision is 75% of your perception. Only 25% of that is like raw data processing. The rest is how you relate to that image. So what happens is this: you take in like data in the form of light hitting your retina, but then most of like the total vision process, the lion's share, like 80%, is taking those colors and shapes and relating it to the story that you understand about that thing. So most of it,
a previous experience.
Right, most of it is your framing, and the way that we make that work is through giving them meaning. Because like if you see like some shape and you don't have what it means to you in there, like you're still going to be describing the meaning of those images with words, and your precision in how you actively or passively determine those words creates your entire reality.
Yeah. Unless you get to the place where you don't believe any of your thoughts.
Okay, if you don't believe any of your thoughts, yeah, so you're talking about like the master of the universe from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right?
I wasn't referencing that, but
are you familiar with it?
no.
Basically, he just like doesn't believe anything he does. He like makes all these jokes about, they come in and ask him a question. He's like, oh yeah, I think there might have been a few guys here earlier, but I can't really remember. I'm just really unreliable. And it's just like completely detached from the past. And he goes like, so he feeds this cat, and he's like, I don't know. I just treat the cat this way, and it seems to feel good. You know what I mean? It's like, so these like other people pulling the strings come to him to make all the decisions for the universe. And that's basically what you're talking about, is having the pure wisdom to know that your perspective is so small.
Yeah.
Right? Like the how far you extend your perspective is going to be directly proportional to how much you try to control the environment. And it's kind of like, that's the same thought behind social engineering. It comes from a place of maybe like morality, but also certainly arrogance, right? Like we know best for how this should be done, so just do it this way. Right?
Yeah. So what I heard was the more we centralize control, the more arrogance is necessary to enforce that control.
We're talking about like large groups now.
Sure.
Because when you're talking about just within yourself, like whatever you believe, like that's what your reality is, and how you frame that reality is really important. And if based on like one unique perspective, you believe that your control of the ambient environment would make it better, then of course it has to come at least a little bit from a place of I know best, right? It's like impossible to avoid. But I'm not saying it's easy for a huge group of people to organize themselves, but generally speaking, if you use simple language, it's pretty darn easy. The reason I think there's so much conflict is because we have bent the language so tragically, deliberately, to hide the truth. Like, lawyers are basically word warriors as far as I'm concerned. And they'll like, take any word and like bend it around and change the rules. And like, ultimately it's just like this weird circuitous path to control a little bit more and to use the mind to capture resources a little bit more.
So anytime, well, I won't say anytime, a lot of the time, and more often recently, I've been in the study of self. I've been in the study of individuals, others, and their development. And something I've been tracking for a while is, is that anything happening on the micro is also happening on the macro. So the stages of development for a human being are the same stages of development for the culture.
Right? Yeah.
And we have small cultures, which may be a group of friends or a family unit in a house. And there's large cultures like the United States, an entire country, or the entire planet. We could say there's a global culture as well. And so each culture fitting within the next. And the more granular you get, the more variation you may get. So what so in regard to culture and what you're talking about right now, how does that work?
I mean, you basically said it, right? There's always going to be an evolution of cultures and societies because, the way people organize themselves is a really interesting question. So and naturally it progresses. I mean, it can only go two ways, right? It can either be more personal responsibility, which is the answer to your very first question in this discussion, which is who's responsible for their health? You're responsible for your health. I'm responsible for my health. And aren't we lucky that if something is more serious, like I had 2 hernias repaired last year, that there's a place that we can go get that done, right?
Yeah.
So very grateful for the fabric of society in a big way, but ultimately your health is your own. And you either go one of two directions. You either accept more personal responsibility for your health, your finances, your mental state of mind, or you give more responsibility to someone else. And that's really like what it is. It can only go one way. And once you give the person with the stick like too much control, it tends to progress only one way. In fact, it only can progress one way.
What way is that? What do you mean?
It can either progress toward more control or less control of the individual by the organizers, right?
Gotcha.
So you have organizers and then you have everybody else. And the more control and responsibility also you give to the organizers, then the less responsibility is going to be in the rest of everybody else. And, it also, just because, yes, it comes from a place of arrogance, but it also comes from an idea of goodness probably too. Like a lot of people I've talked to lately eventually get to this idea that like people just aren't smart enough to make the right decision, for themselves. And, but they really believe that like those people would be harmed if it weren't to like make some rules and then rule them with a stick. Like that's the bottom line, right? So,
children, they're children. I'm the parent, you're the child, and so that's the only time that really comes into play is when you're raising.
Totally.
Yeah, you're saying that you're more developed than somebody else, and not only more developed, but enough developed to not only, not just you're so developed that you actually can make choices for everybody that is the best for each person individually.
Right, and you come up with all these ideas in your mind about what is either the right way or the best way, rather than recognize the simple reality that all we are is energy recyclers. and we trade psychic energy with like compliments and insults. And we try to acquire enough calories to stay hot, and we make sure we drink enough water to stay wet, and we make sure to breathe enough to stay ventilated. Like there aren't that like a human body really needs. So why should I be diminutive of some dude in the South? Because the South always gets fucking beaten down, and like Nebraska and all these places in the middle. Like I've spent a lot of time on the coast, and it's like, oh yeah, well, you know, these people like they talk like this, so they can't know nothing about nothing. And Mike, let me tell you what, shit, I heard a lot of people talk like this, about 10 times smarter than I am, and you would never know it. Rich motherfuckers, smart motherfuckers.
Yeah.
And there ain't no right and wrong way for how to make a living, right?
Correct.
Talk like this all day. Shit.
I don't know if I can do it. I can do a Southern accent. I don't know if I can do a Southern accent while on mic. I mean, I have a little bit of a drawl already. It's built in.
Yeah, you got like a pleasant demeanor about you. It's like a relaxing type of thing.
Relaxing.
No, but serious, it's like that's what it comes down to, is like the teacher-student relationship, as opposed to like the equals, right? And
Yeah.
that's why every time you give charity, you're actually just dropping their platform down a little bit lower. You're taking a little more responsibility. It's like a owner and his dog, man.
Oh man. So what I've noticed is over the years, my impression, my belief, my imagination has created this scenario where in points where fear is the greatest and where there's stress on the individual, people are a lot more quick to give up personal responsibility for someone else to take that responsibility and give them power. So what I'm witnessing right now in this with the threat of the coronavirus is a lot of people want to give up their personal responsibility, and they really are hoping that President Trump or somebody with a vaccine or a scientist or a Democrat or a Republican are going to come in and save the fucking day. So it's interesting because when I say I notice, this is the story I tell myself, is when somebody starts getting really really excited about a potential vaccine, or they're excited about a cure to the disease, or they're excited about some decision a politician made or something that the media put out, it tells me is like, oh, they've yet to take 100% responsibility for their health. That's the story. That's how I'm interpreting it. Is I red flags go up for me.
It's not their fault. They've been conditioned to seek answers from authority since forever. So of course they would be desperate for something to save them, because they already believe that the only thing that is keeping them like alive and well is mama and papa, basically, still. So
Yeah.
of course it makes sense that given the sheer volume of fear pornography, like it's no wonder people are a little bit scared. Are you kidding me? I mean, there's also no better persuasion than this, than a doctor saying you might die. There's no greater persuasion. I mean, it's like a Ponzi scheme though, because it's so like long dated into the future. Like at least with religion, it's like live a good life or I'll send you to hell. And if you live the way I like, then you go to heaven. I mean, I would rather like get my heaven while my personal perspective is that life is heaven or hell, depending on your framing of the experience. Like you look at all this art over time, that art was made by people. And all of these people, including myself, are experiencing like heaven and hell constantly. And finding that balance is something that really like unites people through time, you know? Like people who looked to the tree spirit 15,000 plus years ago were also afraid. Fear is way more persuasive than love too, because it goes deeper. It goes like lizard, right?
Yeah.
So there's just no better, listen, I don't know anything, but there isn't better persuasion than an authority figure, appeal to authority doctor saying you might die. Like it's so, it's so ridiculous. No better scam.
I made an Instagram post. I've been writing more. It's been fun. Poking bears and all that. And I've yet to make any anti-vaxxer type of post, right? But
You'll get banned.
And I'll get banned. Well, I might, yeah. There's some people who I follow that are outspoken that when I go on their Instagram page, there is you know how they, you may not know this because you haven't been on Instagram a lot, but they'll put up like a blurred image and then it says, warning, this has graphic content. It's like a crocodile eating, a lion. It's like, oh shit, you may not be ready for this. And now they have the same thing on Instagram. Is like, the statements made by this person have been flagged as not true or what the fuck ever. And I saw this for the first time yesterday from a really smart guy who I've been following, who like he's like very much so about the individual and personal responsibility, and there is no medical like blanket we can put on everybody to save the world. And his name's Dr. Shiva. I don't know if you've seen his stuff. He's great. I think you'd really like him. But it got flagged, and I watched the video. I could not find any statement. He didn't make any statements as if something was as it was. He questioned a lot. And that made me nervous. I'm like, not only now, if he had made statements like, this is how this is what's happening, I would have been like, oh, I could see maybe there was a fact checker, or it was a fact check thing. Mm-hmm. I was like, he got fact check flagged for asking questions on Instagram. What the fuck? That's when I go, that gave me a little like, oh shit, that fired me up a little bit.
Well, and there's like a new thing happening right now. The first part of the problem is that people are believing more of what they see on a little tiny screen or large, it doesn't matter, but they're believing a larger and larger percentage of that, right? And the way it's currently set up is
not only that, everyone's in their house.
A lot of that happens. It's with them all the time. A lot of that happens, and there is no there's no like universal area where everybody just puts out their stuff and it's not filtered. We have these large companies that do control the flow of that interchange, and they will decide what is true and not true for you before you even get a chance to see it. So on the one hand, it's like, this is a private business. On the other hand, it's like, is it free speech or is it not free speech? And what are the rules?
Well, I say
language is like this. There's a Dave Chappelle joke. He goes, the First Amendment is first for a reason. The Second Amendment is just in case the first one doesn't work out. Like, everybody is like desperately trying to use our words to figure this out.
Right.
Always. Because that's the reality.
Yeah. What makes it tough, because I'm with, like, I've always been like, you know what? If it's a business, then they should be able to do whatever they want, even if it seems unfair or whatever. However, the problem comes in when the CEOs of the companies are going to Washington, D.C., and now there's collusion with the government. So if there was true separation of business and government, then which would be a pure capitalist system,
right,
there'd be a different story, but that doesn't actually exist. We have Zuckerberg hanging out in fucking DC and putting on a show. You know, they put on a show last year. They put on a show that, you know, oh, we're coming down hard on Zuckerberg. But now all of a sudden they're like, oh, the government wants Zuckerberg to do the thing they were coming down on him for now, because
this
now
is why
they got their fucking hands in the company and now they're turning the knobs.
Listen, this is why you never give someone too big of a stick, because someone can always pay for them to use that stick how they please. So the problem is how much coercion can be done legally, right? Because at least when I go to Walmart, they don't force me to buy the carrots. It's like I have this joke that true capitalism is where they buy and sell carrots, and communism is where they give you the stick for free. I mean, dude, human motivation is the carrot and the stick.
Yeah.
There's a guy on the boat that we're rowing. We're all rowing a boat. There's a guy with a whip, and there's a guy beating the drum. And you know what? It's like that. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. The older I get, the more that little rhyme just like totally blows my mind. So we've created this dream that's based on fear. And that's what we're experiencing right now, is the fear is so great at such a hair trigger that people are like very much willing to turn a blind eye to the sticking that they are excusing and apologizing for. Well, we need the stick. Listen, it's for your own good. We got to use the stick. We got to force people to stop, you know, connecting with each other freely. We got to stop that. We got to use the stick. It's for your own good. Like, it's just like you said before. Every argument ultimately leads back to what is the percentage of personal responsibility and then outside responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I see in moments like this, the divergence becomes greater. So there's a high percentage of the population that goes, oh, please save me. And then you have a low percentage of the population who has that sovereignty that they've developed and go, you know, I'm perfectly fine. And so that gap's only going to get bigger. And I've had people, I've said, hey, I'm not interested in participating in certain things, such as vaccines or something like that. So yeah, I'm really not interested in participating in that. And I feel very comfortable with it, you know, whereas somebody else is freaked out about not having that as something to keep them healthy, right? Or their concern is, well, if I don't get my kids the flu shot and I don't get the flu shot myself, then like, you know, I'm not being a responsible parent to my kids, because I might pass the virus on along to them. And so now there's this whole collective, the collective is weak, so now we have to vaccine everybody conversation. Well, as if that was, even if the vaccines were accurate.
And I bet a lot of the people who feel this way also believe the food pyramid applies to everybody, and that school is a good 12-year investment in personal development for a smart, sophisticated adult. Are you kidding me? Like, what the mainstream says to eat, which we're food. We're playing a game called Food or Be Food. The food pyramid, the mainstream idea, is total hogwash. Of course it doesn't apply to everybody. And what we do to kids is abuse. We abuse kids for 12 years. We measure people, we measure kids when they're 6 to decide if they're good or not at obeying authority, basically, and sitting still and paying attention, instead of being curious and creative and collaborative. I mean, what do we expect? Like, it's so funny. Like, that's kind of what this has done for me, is it really made me realize that, you know, we've stretched it to the point right now where the organizers who hold the carrots and the sticks, just there's no incentive for them not to keep capturing control, and for the people who are being controlled, that's what they're used to. So of course I'm going to be met with like verbal violence if I offer up an opinion that is contrary to the popular one, because most people believe what some media outlet tells them. Most people blindly believe doctors, even though we're the fattest, sickest country. I mean, are you kidding me? The fatness and the sickness overall. I mean, it's no wonder.
Yeah, if what we're doing is working so fucking well, then why are we having record-breaking disease? Why are we having, like you're saying, the obesity, the diabetes, cancer, heart disease? All these things are continually going up, and for some reason we think what we've been doing is working, and the people we've been trusting is working, and it's not. I mean, and part of it is we have to look at this as there's quite a few different things that are impacting and influencing the fatness and sickness of people. But the two big ones that I see is economic. People will always go towards what's cheap and convenient because they want to make their resources, their energy, which is money, go as far as possible. And so
still avoid being sick with spending almost no money on food, though.
So what?
I think you can be extremely healthy spending almost no money on food.
I agree. But yeah. So what I'm saying though is most of the cheap food is unhealthy. We'll say 90% is unhealthy. But then on the other side is the education. So you have so you have economics and education, right? Both of which are coming from outside of yourself that's making an influence. The other two things that would cause influence over self, it comes from within, but I'm only talking about the external factors, the things that we control.
Behaviors. It's what do you believe and what do you actually do? That's the bottom line.
What do you believe and what do you actually do?
That's it. Beliefs and behaviors. Full stop.
So do you think that people are behaving what they believe, or do you think that they're behaving in ways that are counter to their beliefs?
I think
for the most part.
I think it depends on what you mean by beliefs, because I have in the past labeled myself as maybe the world's greatest hypocrite and most humble also, certainly. But you know what I realize is, like, the only way to get past that relationship is to, number one, forgive yourself for that, have compassion for yourself, and realize that everything we're doing is highly unnatural for a monkey. Like, there's really no good reason why you would go like write books and teach seminars all over the world. Like, I should be hanging in a tree with a banana right now. Like, there's no reason I should be typing away on this thing, like with many of those lower layers of my brain. But, you know, of course people behave in a way that is different than what they believe is correct, but it's still all within the framework of the law of least action. You know, that's a natural law. We do like the least possible that we think will get us what we really need. And you just have to like elevate the importance of that behavior, because ultimately, if it is important enough, it's kind of like neurotransmitters. Like, you need to have like a neurochemical catalyst by having enough neurotransmitters cross, right? It doesn't work if you just have like a little bit. Like,
right.
I sometimes think about manicuring my front yard, but like, I don't really spend a lot of time there, so I always say fuck it. I've said fuck it for 5 straight years. It just rained a bunch, it's full of weeds. I could give a shit less. The reality is, like, because that's what I actually do. And then sometimes I'm like, do I want to have like a manicure? No, but I just don't care. So you ultimately always do exactly what you really, really, really want to do. And if there's something you're not doing, it's just not important enough yet. Like I swear, people get real hungry, they will do some unthinkable things.
Yeah. Well, I believe that people, they state their beliefs in a way to gain popularity or to be liked by others, so they're accepted, but their behaviors are what shows what they really value or believe.
Yeah, ultimately we do everything to survive and then also be loved.
Yeah.
That's like every exercise program is because people want to be like a lovable size, whether that is like bigger or smaller or something. Like they just want to be a more lovable shape. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And so that will come from like achieving some benchmark. Fuck, dude, I was convinced that if I had visible bumpy stomach muscles, that girls would just be like swarming all over me. And like little did I know that if I'd invested like 1/10 the time in writing a little poetry, it would have had like way greater effects.
Yeah. Yeah. I've man, I still have the lumpy stomach muscles.
Yeah.
And I've worked on losing them, but they're just there. And
Yeah.
you know who never comments on my abs?
The girls you're with?
Yeah, the women. You know who does comment on my abs? The guys.
Yeah.
The guys.
Dude,
I would take it the other way every day of the week.
Dude, I got such a funny story for you. I was in the Bahamas at a bar. This was right before like the really drunk pickup basketball game at 3 a.m. It was at a bar down the street in Bahamas. And I remember there were some cute girls there and there's some guys there. And I did a handstand press on a bar stool and the bar and cranked out push-ups there. Just like pop up, boom, 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 boom. And I was thinking like, oh, maybe some of those girls are gonna like that. And then as soon as I came down, and I'll never forget it, was so funny. All these strange dudes who I've never met are like coming over and shaking my hand and high-fiving me. And all the girls are like gone. Like actually gone by the time I look up, and I'm just thinking, like, oh man, that was like totally the opposite of what I thought I would do. And it just shows how completely ignorant I really was.
Oh shit. Okay, I want to go back a little bit because I said cheap, unhealthy food tends to be cheap, and it sounded like you had a disagreement in a way. I wanted to hear what you were saying, like in regard to that.
You can get a complete protein with beans and rice and a little bit of meat. It's not expensive. You can get yourself an instant pot and one cast iron skillet, and you can be totally good. It's just that people don't, because there's an option that is easier and quicker and seems like a perfectly viable substitute, but it's not one-to-one, because actually they're spending a little bit more money on McDonald's. It's delicious, don't get me wrong, but they just have gotten habituated to that quick fix. And here's the deal, like the quicker your happy drug endocrine cascade, you know, those hormones that go in from doing the things that you like to do, whether that's like eating a chocolate, drinking some wine, or watching porno, or let's see, I mean, scrolling on Facebook, gambling, like there are all kinds of things we can do. Like eating food is just another one of those habit cycles.
Well, you just listed off a bunch of things that are entertainment.
Right.
Yeah.
But food can be entertainment too. Like
exactly.
Have a plenty. So
but if it's always entertainment,
it's not that it's not. Well, it's not possible. It's not that it's not possible to eat cheap. It's that people would rather not eat healthy and cheap. They would rather eat cheap and deliciously unhealthy, because like what the fuck do they care? That's just more worth it to them. Like, for example, there's a funny bit in Half Baked where they're like talking about like how they had like all this trouble with marijuana. And like Bob Saget stands up and is like, I suck dick for coke. Have you ever sucked dick for marijuana? And it just goes to show like the relationship you have with that thing, right? And the whole that it has on you. So something like heroin, I hear, is pretty darn addictive, which can only mean.
I heard crack was way more addicting than heroin. Yeah,
like,
I was told by some enthusiasts that
what's that?
they were like, man, heroin. You know what? Heroin's only addicting if your life sucks. But they said if you want something that's truly gonna hook you, smoke crack. And they were telling me, they go, bro, smoke crack. These guys are highly successful. Some of the most successful people I know. Okay, and they just happen to like be adventurous. And one of the guys goes, smoke crack, smoke it once, and make sure you don't know where to get more. I was like, damn. By the way, I just want everyone to know that there are zero plans for me to smoke crack in the future, and I've never smoked it in the past. So just
you say right now, I mean, you don't know what your life is going to be like 6 months from now.
Well, that's why I said that there's no plans, because the future is highly unpredictable. Highly unpredictable. Actually, it's not predictable at all. I think every time I've tried to predict anything that was going to happen in the future, it did not happen. But I may have gotten close.
Sometimes it
than
happens,
others, but never.
You know, sometimes though it happens exactly as you thought it was going to happen. Isn't that weird?
I've had the end result show up, but the way in which it showed up, it's never the way.
Yeah, don't try to determine the path, but you can still aim at the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, I hold intention for the future like a motherfucker, because it does happen. But the way I don't get to predict how it happens, and then the way the way it looks at the end is always better than what I had predicted.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a good point. I mean, what did I read in a book? I think it was in like A Return to Love or something like that. It was like, this is a little bit woo-woo, right? It's like God's plan works, yours doesn't. Now, I don't take that to mean like that there is or isn't like a conscious like being that like calls the shots, but there's definitely like a tide of this, you know, society and culture and spaceship Earth that we're all living on. It's still really useful to express yourself authentically, but you're not going to be able to control the result. And that kind of leads us right back to what's happening in our society right now, is we're very desperate to control the result more, take away more chance for there to be any kind of like situation, right? Like it could be totally altruistic to be thinking like, oh my God, of course we have to put a microchip in everybody so they don't accidentally get too close to like this person who had a disease. Like I can understand how someone who is like thinking, oh my God, there's going to be a virus 10 years from now that wipes out 90% of the population if we don't have this like amazing system now. Because the more you cling to the ego that you have right now, the more natural it is to want to protect that. And it's like we talked about, fear is by far the more persuasive thing. I mean, it's crazy.
So how's your quarantine been? All right, here's the thing, is you're already living a hermit lifestyle. Has anything changed for you whatsoever?
I'm not going to the beach, and it irks me, and actually the wiring in my steam shower is not working. So hopefully you guys will pray for my steam shower to start working.
So your steam shower's out of order. You can't have anyone come fix it. Is that the problem?
Oh no, I just haven't called anybody yet. That'll probably still working. I'm just trying to see how much of an arrogant prick I can sound like in 10 seconds.
So, but you can't go to the beach. You're in San Diego.
Right.
I have a ton of friends in San Diego, and there's by the way, did you know it only happens like every decade bioluminescence bacteria in the water. Is it bacteria? Something like that. And when the waves are crashing at night, the waves are glowing. It's a blue neon glow. So I have a few friends that are sneaking. They're doing some Navy SEAL shit.
Sneaking to the beach.
Sneaking to the beach.
Wow.
And could possibly be fined or put in jail for watching these waves. So yeah, what you normally go to the beach. You're not going to the beach now.
No, you're not allowed. I mean, my opinion is the least popular one possible on this.
Ooh, yes.
No, it really is. Like, it's so funny. I mean, even you can either make a claim or you can ask a question. And that's really all we can do as far as like the words are concerned. So, I mean, I question the necessity of forcing everybody to stop trading freely. That's all. I question the necessity for our movement to be restricted rather than to just inform and say like, hey, listen, here's the deal. We got a big bad bat flu going around. And if it gets in your lungs, you might be kind of fucked. So don't sneeze on each other. And if you wear one of these, like probably okay. So everything that's not that, I do not support.
Got it.
I mean, it's so it's so obvious to me, you know, because the long term, I mean, like I don't even know if I know anything, but it's like eventually whoever holds the stick changes, right? So the more power you give the stick holder, like you're giving that to the next guy too. Like we might get Joffrey next, for fuck's sake, instead of Stone Cold Steve Austin. I feel like it's Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then like next is Joffrey.
I like Joffrey. Not in reality. I would hate to have Joffrey as the king of America.
Like worst thing we could.
I like the analogy because that could happen. That could happen.
I would be happy to have a total egomaniac president as long as his ego wanted to be laying down in history as the greatest president ever, because that would just mean they're like the happiest people. Like, I don't care if you have like a giant ego, but if you're like a psychopathic killer, that's way more devastating.
Yeah. What do you think about people? I've told people that I don't vaccinate myself, and they're appalled that I would put other people at risk like that.
Well, I mean, I've heard a lot of people parrot back that story as well, and it's a really good verbal attack they're doing on you to try to say that it is your responsibility for everybody else, right? I mean, that's also like another perfect scam. There's really no way to argue it. You just either believe that it's going to improve your chances, or you don't believe it's going to improve your chances. But whether or not you have the ability to choose whether or not you do, like, that's why I prefer Walmart. Dude, I mean, like, at least I get to choose. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
You know, and everything comes back to that. You can make the conversation as complicated as you want. I mean, I can toss an awesome academic word salad as well as anybody else, start talking about all kinds of like physiological shit. But ultimately, it's, do you get to choose, or we tell you to?
Was it my housemate Ben, my quarantine mate Ben?
Yeah.
Last night we were having we got a little high and had a conversation, and we were talking about, you know, mandatory vaccinations and putting the public at risk and all this. And he goes, well, why are we letting people go to McDonald's? Every time someone eats McDonald's, they're putting the public's health at risk. If each individual is now responsible for the collective, now we have to ban junk food.
Mike, are eggs fucking good for me or bad for me? I can eat a fucking egg.
I'm so confused about that because I used to think eggs were good for me,
But
and I
then
would eat them every day. And then I found out that they're not good for me, but they're good for you. What the fuck, man? It messes up
well,
my digestion.
and it's like, okay, then egg yolks were bad. And they were like, you can eat the white part, but not the yellow part. And then suddenly it was like, okay, 1 egg yolk and 3 egg whites. And you're like, so I need to do math just to make an omelet now because like this yolk will like only kind of kill me. So
It's not
isn't it
imperfect
crazy?
food.
But isn't it crazy though that like the same ones who are like doing school and food pyramids, we want to like give them more opportunities to fuck us over. Like, are you kidding me? Like, if I could go back and not take school at all and just learn to read and add, I would do it in a heartbeat. If I could get anybody to take their kid out of school and just like talk to the little fucker, I would recommend they do it in a heartbeat. And you should see the sound get sucked out of a room when I say that sending kids to 12 years of public school is destructive rather than constructive.
Yeah. What I was homeschooled K through 12, and when I mentioned that to entrepreneurs, people who are in charge of their own lives, they I get the response of like, "Oh fuck, dude, you're so lucky." I had to unlearn so many things
Oh yeah.
in order to be successful. So, what were some of the things that you had to unlearn from school?
I mean, self-worth attached to performance is a good one. Hyper competitiveness, I would say, is another good one. Blindly following authority is another one. I mean, shit, just the total waste of time it was. The wreck it had on my body and mind. Like I never. That's the funny thing is like, dude, all these people who are like, yeah, school, we need more fucking school. It's like, dude, share with me what you remember from fucking school. Teach me a little bit about. Do you remember like 4th grade social studies? You don't remember a goddamn thing about 4th grade social studies. You study that shit for like a week, have a huge test, and then you move on to the next thing. It's like taking a sponge into water, letting it fill, taking it out, dumping it out, and then putting it back in. So we get used to just following and obeying. Like, of course, I don't think it's constructive.
Yeah.
Only thing you need is skin in the game. Like, there are
How does that happen? How do you get skin in the game?
hunger. What do you mean? We already have skin in the game. We're energy recyclers. We just have minds instead of only like claws and teeth.
Yeah.
So we have all of this like potential power to organize our ideas and find ways to create value for other people. And I think the most important thing is to just be like really shameless. Like I started doing a podcast now. It's I finally bit the bullet. It's too good of an opportunity to share my views in a consistent way. And the title of it is Minimum Effort, Maximum Shank. And this really
I love it.
epitomizes the way I view the world. I'm so comfortable in myself that I have become totally shameless in my desire, which is to gain more with less. That's the bottom line. I want to go deeper into a topic. I want to learn more about that topic. I want to get as much information and learning and fun per minute that I possibly can. Otherwise, I'm going to be the banana wielding monkey in the tree. And I'm just going to hang out and eat bananas.
Well, that everything you just said sounds a lot like, to me, quality over quantity, and quality producing in the end.
Well, it's leverage. It's leverage. Because
but the thing you're doing less of needs to be done better, or at least practicing discernment on what's the most effective, what's the most impactful thing I can do to get this result over here.
Right. And it's not necessarily doing less, although that's definitely my favorite thing to do is less. Just like everybody else, though, it's the law of least action. This is not something that we should be like punishing ourselves for feeling this way. But it's about efficiency. So I may want to be doing productive work all day. As long as I'm going to be doing it, though, I'm going to try to see what are the longest levers I can pull rather than cranking away at the shortest levers. And I mean, lately, you know, the more honest I am with myself, I just go, okay, like, what's the most like profit producing behavior I can engage in? Because profit is a really good indicator because it's an automatic win-win. You know, I win for you, I win for me. So that feels way better than a win-lose, which is also like kind of how a lot of these social engineering ideas work, but we'll get back to that some other time. Actually, we don't even need to go back to it. We've already discussed it enough. But basically what I realized is the best leverage for me is definitely using my mind and writing stuff down. Like you just get an idea of, okay, like what do I really do that is the longest lever? And if you keep refining, you ultimately can make a way bigger impact with way less effort. And then if you've also got the presence of mind to not live too extravagantly, then you're going to be able to have a good shock absorber for situations that are happening like right now. Like, you know, on the one hand, I'm really pissed that the gym has been closed, but I also tend to operate a little more safely, which is kind of like fearfully, right? I tend to just be comfortable with a larger nest egg because that feels more comfortable to me, basically. So if you can create something that is really valuable, then when you experience things like this, it's not going to feel so scary.
I'm going to be completely honest. I missed the last 10 seconds what you said because I was looking at the comments that people were leaving on Facebook on this live stream.
Oh, no worries. Well, you can, if you have the focus to like create something valuable, and if you have the presence of mind to have like your own shock absorber, then an experience like this, even though it sucks, isn't going to totally destroy and break you. And I know that I just tend to be a little bit more on the like security end of the spectrum. So I tend to like hold a little bit more in reserves than the average person. And here's the deal: when you are habituated to not having those reserves, then when someone comes along and says, hey, I have the solution for you, you just have to give me some of those freedoms again, naturally they're going to say yes to that, because the more desperate you are, the more you're going to settle, right?
Yeah.
It goes exactly back to what you said about crack. It's always back to crack with this thing. Like the more desperate you are, the more like depraved of a deal that you're going to essentially negotiate into.
Yeah. So you're talking about money. And
any energy transfer.
Well, yeah. I mean, but you were referencing profit leading into this conversation, and I imagine that people are hearing this and going, okay, he's got money in reserves. But one thing that I came into this with was I had energetic reserves as well. So because you're the kind of guy that you came in with more than just money reserves. You came in with energy reserves. You're set up in a way.
You can split it into buckets too, in terms of like how good your shock absorption is, because survivability is all about adaptability. So the other thing I feel really happy about is, you know, I have really like nurtured the important relationships in my life too. And I have people who I can express freely with. And, you know, so it's not just like, can you continue to buy food, which, I mean, that's the main thing. Remember, it's food or be food. Like, can you continue to buy food? Can you keep like the roof over your head? Then you're fine. But just like you decide how much that is. But also having the social shock absorber, that like network of people who brings that psychic energy up, like brings your chi up. basically, you
Yeah.
know? And that ability to express yourself is the way to avoid becoming depressed. You know, the way we
Yeah.
use language is very important. And, you know, I'm totally unlicensed to give any kind of advice, but as my alter ego, Dr. Placebo, the the concept of something like depression and addiction, they actually have studies about how hard it is to define those words. Okay. So there's not a lot of total confirmation on what those words even mean by the alleged authority figures and experts. So ultimately, that word means whatever you believe that it means. And you feel whatever you feel, but you know, the reality is if you have a lot of outlets to express yourself, I mean, that's the other thing, man. Sometimes I get like, you know, not super down about all this stuff. Sometimes I get, quite frankly, a little bit irritated. And it's beneficial occasionally to be able to go do some sandbag carries or to play some music or do some dancing or something like that. And, you know, me in my 20s would be like kind of like laughing at that comment. I'd be like, oh, that's kind of like some fairy shit right there. But okay. But being able to express yourself in a lot of different ways, both verbally and like using language very precisely, and also things like music and movement and singing. I mean, there are a lot of different aspects to this concept of shock absorption, because the better your shock absorbers are, the less likely you are going to be like begging for help from the victim role rather than having that responsibility for self and that help responsible for by self.
Yeah. Yeah. I came into this situation we're in with quite a big buffer, if you will. And I'll talk about shock absorbers in a different way, which is similar in what you're saying, but I'm seeing something slightly different. And that is, you and I have both built up quite a bit of range. We can talk about physical range. It's like, yeah, deadlifted 500 pounds, but also can dance, or, you know, you have flexibility or whatever. So you have this range, but you're not pushing into the end ranges all the time. It's an infrequent push into those end ranges. And so I do that. I've learned to do that in my training. I've learned to do that in my life. And I've had to remind people who are in our mastermind a lot of times, they see me work. They saw me work a lot for about 3 weeks when this thing started. And I had to remind people, I go, look, you don't need to work like I'm working. I told other people on the team, you don't need to work like I'm working. I came into this thing fucking fresh. Like, I basically rolled into the coronavirus thing. I was in Colombia for 5 weeks. I was in Costa Rica for 2 weeks. I worked a little, but in my version of work, we could call it, but I came in feeling really good. I was relaxed. I was energized. I thought I was coming back to the United States to take care of business. I was walking into Columbus, Ohio to go to the Arnold Sports Festival, slang some 90-day programs. I was going to go to Paleo FX next weekend from now, and I was going to do the same thing. I was going to speak on stage. I was going to go do all this stuff. I actually was like, I was coming in fresh. And this whole thing hit, and I go, oh, and so I saw all this opportunity coming up, and I go, oh, there's all these people need help. Oh, I can do that now. I can help. Like, oh, what needs to be done? And I just started working. And I worked for 12, 14 hours a day, day after day after day, which I would normally, I tell people, don't do that. And the only reason I could do that for as long as I did, and there was a lot of productivity that came out of that, is because I came in fresh, because I had that buffer. I had a shock absorber, and that I don't live my everyday life. I don't work myself to the bone all the time, because the people who do, when this happens, they've got no room to think. There's no room to consider. There's no room to make smart decisions. There's only room to react. And reaction is usually poor versus What would be another way of
Proactive, probably.
I don't like proactive. I don't know.
Deliberate.
Yeah, deliberate and whatever. Like being able to like take in the information, take a breath, consider, and then go forward. Most people just kind of like, oh fuck, I got to do this.
You know, my buddy Anders and I actually talked about the topic of readiness on my podcast the other day. And you break it down into all kinds of different things. Like you have your naked readiness, which is not supported by any tools, except the one you were given, of course. I mean, thumbs, obviously, is what I meant. But then you also have your tool supported readiness, you know, and when you think about responsibility, you have to also consider response time. Like how quickly can you A, like mentally rebalance, and B, like physically and financially rebalance? Like how quickly can you be ready? Like, you know, I tend to be like more on the side of the ready spectrum. You know what I mean? Because in my opinion, I am either a pleasant and useful companion on the boat, or I am an unpleasant and useless companion on the boat. And you have combinations, like you can be useful and you can be like a pain in my ass. And actually, I would prefer that, quite frankly, to someone who is like just, you know what I mean?
I'm laughing over here because I'm having memories of these two types of people in dire situations.
Well, yeah, exactly. And it's like, you know, something different happens. And you're like, well, yeah, that's how it always is. Like, it's always no shit. Like, it's never been really exactly the same thing that happens, depending on what you believe. Let's leave that. Right. But ultimately, you're either ready or you're not. You're either going to go like, cool, now what do we do? So that's my reorienting question. Right? Yeah. You know, I don't want to be one of those fucking fair weather fans in the magic dance fight of life, okay? I want to like, you know, be one of those like loyal fans and like really appreciate it. And it's not always the easiest thing to do, right? Sometimes you're like, are you kidding me with this bullshit? Like, this is how it's going to go? But ultimately, you have to just say, cool. Now, what do we do? Like you know, the way we like think about it and frame the past, you can like have this, you know, your past is just ego. That's your idea of what's going on. That's it. So how quickly can you pivot and just say, you know what, that old ego is not going to be the most ready right now. So what is going to be the most ready? What's going to be the most pleasant? What's going to be the most useful? And so what I did was I quickly took to social media and I asked a few like really penetrating questions that would directly make people question their beliefs.
Oh, I was watching
and of
very
course,
entertained.
And you know, here I am like waiting for everyone to thank me for setting them straight. Like the opposite of that. It turns out like people really don't like having their beliefs questioned at all.
Dude, questions get. I've asked questions and then people are like, it's like they make up a story like, oh, you must be like this. I'm like, no. I'm asking a question. Like, can you answer it?
Right.
No. So critical thinking is offline. Got it.
So that was my first strategy, was to, you know, make people question this thing that's going on. And like, okay, you know, I'm trying to decide if free speech is a right or a responsibility. And God, dude, trust me, like, I don't want to be talking about this shit. I want to be out in the tree and the banana. Like, I want to be eating bananas in the last thing I want to do is like talk about all this. Like, that's the last thing I need. But ultimately, your ability to respond is your readiness. And your readiness is based on what you can respond to. So the amount of elasticity you possess in the shock absorption and the speed that you can absorb that shock. Coincidentally, that's also going to be the difference between you straining or tearing something and not straining or tearing something.
Right.
It's a combination of how far the tissue got stretched and how quickly it got stretched. And your ability to respond to that is based on your prior training, right? So that's kind of what's happening right now. I tend to live personally more on the safe side, and I try to avoid going too far beyond my means. And I mean, whatever, like you can decide how much risk and how much reward you want to try to get. Like I'll never become like a super, 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 super ridiculous, like multi-billionaire, because I have like absolutely no desire to accumulate that much energy. So I never would.
Yeah. This makes me think about a conversation.
Oh, sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
People should think about what the word readiness means to them. And like, just think about like ready for what? It's all situation dependent, because it's not just about being able to respond in emergencies. It works for being able to enjoy experiences too. Like if you're 65, for example, and you can go like run around and play touch football, or you can go try to learn how to play tennis, or, you know, do something. If you feel like physically capable, it's not just that you're going to be able to like pick up your like passed out wife and carry her out of the burning building. It's also that you'll just be able to enjoy life more.
You'll be able to wipe your own ass.
But not just that, but also be able to like really savor like everything that life has to offer.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm like a hedonic connoisseur in a lot of ways. I have been doing some oil pastels and Indian club swinging and piano and reading, and also I'm singing some rap songs that I wrote.
Nice.
Super fun. And I think that's what that readiness expands into. It's just like how expansive is your life versus like how contractile is your life. And the more you believe in like the images that you're seeing, the more you close yourself off to those opportunities to connect with yourself and others in other ways. Like everything comes down to opportunity cost. So you ultimately, whatever you're plugged into, literally connected to, is going to have a feedback loop with you.
Yeah. The this actually, I've been contemplating what health is the last week, and I made a post where I titled it in a way in which I knew was going to get a certain response, which was going to be a lot of people who follow me were going to love it, and then there was going to be quite a few people who fucking thought I was the devil. And so started off with, have you heard that healthy people are dying of COVID-19? And then I went on to say, like, you know, who's defining health here? Are we leaving it up to the individual who claimed, well, I was healthy and I got COVID-19?
That's good, Lewis.
And then, yeah, oh yeah, I'm good at clickbait. Come on now.
Yeah,
I'm a marketer.
I'll tell you, that is a good skill. That's a valuable skill.
Oh yeah. Well, we could talk about the value of different skills. That's a whole nother thing. But what I did is I brought into question an individual's, you know, the people who claim I'm healthy. I brought into question people defining themselves as healthy, and I brought into question our medical system's standards of definition of health. I never defined health, but I did make a list of things that I found to be unhealthy. And things that I found to be healthy behaviors to combat, because I did not want to just throw a match on the gasoline and walk away. That'd be irresponsible of me. So I threw the match on the gasoline to get people's attention. And then I said, and here is an alternative way of thinking about health without defining it. And then I had I had a handful of people come out. Lots of DMs, comments in there. And what really got me thinking about is, okay, how are we thinking about health as a whole? How am I thinking about health? And what you were just saying about readiness, because here's the thing is I was thinking about health in regard to integrity. And that is like actual structural integrity. And that is something has integrity if it works. If the boat has no holes in the bottom, it's going to float. You drill a hole in the bottom, now water gets in, it lacks integrity. So people were saying, well, so-and-so, they started naming off like these top CrossFit athletes. Well, so-and-so, Chris Spiegler, he got it. He had he's recovering though. I go, well, he's obviously not healthy. Like the moment that you are sick, you're no longer healthy. Or maybe you're experiencing symptoms and it's not a sign of lack of health. It's just the body detoxing. And this whole thing that's a bad thing. And so, it's killing people because it's too much of a load on the body in the detoxification process. They're so fucked already that they can't detox enough without dying. And
go ahead.
And so what I've been playing around with is if your body cannot withstand an assault, the moment that you are sick or ill or have disease, you're no longer healthy. So you may have been healthy and then you came in contact with a thing. It's like everyone's talking about health, but what they're really talking about is predictive measures of health. Of like, oh, I can run a 5-minute mile. My blood work says this, all these predictive measures of health. So now they take on this belief, I am healthy. But then when something comes they come in contact with something that is an assault on their health and their body does not manage it in the way that they want, now they start questioning it. So what I question from people is, it's like, now I'm thinking about this. I go, well, if you get sick, like if your body isn't doing what you want it to do, like it's just not as healthy as you want it to be.
Right.
And I like that you're ready this conversation because that makes sense.
It's a gradient. Okay.
Right.
Health is a gradient. Like I got a buddy who's diabetic and all of his shit hurts. He's got dental problems. His eyesight sucks. He is alive, but I would not call him exceptionally healthy. So each individual needs to decide how they are going to define healthy in their mind, because their beliefs are going to have an effect on what they believe is healthy and what they believe is sick. So semantic precision, you have to at least determine for yourself what healthy means, what addiction means, what depressed means. And in defining those things, you can also let them go, right? Like, so for me, it's really helpful to say that express and depress are just opposites. So depressed, it means that you can't express what is going on. You don't have a way to express yet. And you know what? For me and a few other people I've talked to, it's awesome. So you can take it or leave it. But ultimately, I
love that. Yeah.
Fine words is what matters. Semantic precision, the principle of semantic precision is not that there is an all-encompassing definition or thing that means a thing, right? This is all just symbols, so we can try to have a common ground of understanding. There's no one solid definition of the word thing, okay? You can try to look it up, but it's impossible. You're not gonna be able to it just goes in very circuitous logic. So the whole principle of semantic precision is to at least have the two people who are having that conversation understand that means the same thing.
Yeah. I think that's likely at the root of all debate, all arguments. I had someone say something to me the other day, which was they were wanting to debate something, and then I realized that the end result we both wanted was exactly the same, and how I thought it would be achieved would be different. And they really believe, and you see this in politics a lot. It's like they believe they actually want something different. I'm like, no, everyone wants the same thing. It's just that how they want to get there is different. Like we all want everyone to be healthy, but some people think they're going to achieve it through, better, we'll say different behavior and lifestyle choices. And some people think it's going to be by having more lab coats with needles running around. Right. So we all want the same thing.
So if you want everyone to be healthy, you can do it in like one of two ways. You can send them like a kit that has like a Swiss ball and a kettlebell in it, or you can just give them a pamphlet that says like, hey, here are the health guidelines. Walk for an hour a day, exercise for an hour a day, sing, dance, play catch with the ball. And like, that's probably going to be good enough. And if you want to get really strong, like that's up to you. So that's one way. And the other way is you put people on a treadmill and you hold a big stick and you say, fucking run or I hit you with the stick. Like, you can get people to behave, whether, you know, and it just comes from whether you think who's responsible. You hit it the nail on the head, because we talked about two things that are the most important, which is health and responsibility. And what's funny is when you asked me that question, you did not have a clear picture in your mind of what either of those words meant.
No.
Yeah.
Always.
Right? But think about how interesting that is. You know, this is our job. Like, you and I are experts in health and readiness, right? So if you take those two words,
I'll take the label.
I would say so. I mean, like, listen, you got to compare relatively, but
I'll say this: we're doing it better than 99%. We're experts.
Yeah.
And by the way, someone who's fat and overweight and just happens to have a lab coat is not an expert in health. They're an expert in something, but don't give them the health. Look at somebody who's healthy.
Well, and just because I have like sick arms doesn't mean you should listen to me for upper body training either.
That's true.
Right?
That's
and
true.
it goes both ways. So it's great, because what we're saying is, okay, is health your responsibility or someone else's? You can have whatever opinion of that you want, but what you can do is you can define health and you can define responsibility for yourself. What does healthy mean to you? What's the target? What does responsibility mean to you? What's the target? Like, do you need 6 months of finances saved up? What do you need saved up to be ready? Do you need to be able to walk 10 miles? No problem.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to beliefs and behaviors. That's it. And you can control those. That's what's cool.
Let's wrap it here. Max, where can people find you?
MaxShank.com.
MaxShank.com.
I would recommend you pop on my email list, because I'm about to launch Primal Athleticism. That's what we were talking about before. I was doing the live videos.
Yeah.
Actually, go onto YouTube and just Google Max Shank on the YouTube search. And I did 8 videos, and they're each like 10 to 15 minutes long, and they're awesome. I basically just stacked all of the stuff that I thought was best for someone to do every single day. And that was actually the answer to your question before of, cool, now what do we do? That was what I decided was the best thing I could personally do, right? You and I, because we're ready, think, like, what do we do? What's the best thing? That's the best thing I could think of. Hustle.
Hustle, baby. All right, Max, thanks for joining me today. I know everyone else loved it. Appreciate you, brother. Love you.
Love you.
Oh, that was great. That was great.
Yeah, awesome, man.